Alright, now we're ready to install our pistons into our cylinder block. And what we have here, like I showed you before, we have brand new flat top pistons, and the rods have been resized, which is all newly machined here. We have our engine bearings here, which are the rod bearings. Slip right in here like so. And we're also going to install these little rod protector caps that will go right over the rod bolt, so when we install this in the engine it doesn't damage the crankshaft on the way in. This is a little cushion, and we just take it off and put it on the next one as we go along. Alright, and then also, as you can see, we have our piston ring compressor tool here, which comes in very handy for a job like this. And I have already loosened all of my bearing caps on all the rods, which makes it a little bit simpler. Saves a little time. Just get them all loose, but I usually leave them on so they don't get mixed up from rod to rod, even though they are numbered. So anyways, I've already put the bearing and the protector on there. Same with the bearing cap. So we're going to put some assembly lube on this stuff and install it in the block. Alright, the next thing we're going to do here is install the piston, and actually we're going to put some oil on the piston and a little bit in the cylinder here. That's what I like to do, and just give it a nice coat with your finger. The cylinder will be all lubed up. Just put a little bit on the piston. This is actually a little thick oil. Some people actually dunk them in oil, but I don't like to do that. Just a good coating of oil. Make sure there's no dry surfaces. That's the main thing. Okay, make sure your piston rings are 180 degrees off your gaps. What you got there, take your piston ring compressor. Find the notch on your piston, which will be pointing to the front of the engine. I usually like to hold the tool in an upward angle so we can put it in like this. This is our number one piston. Okay. Now, and again, we need to guide the bearing end in on and over this crankshaft to make sure it doesn't scratch the crankshaft, even though I have these protectors on it. Okay, went right in, no problem. Just tap that booger in the rest of the way. Now remember, these bearing caps only fit on one way. Both of the notched ends will be on the same side. Just going to tighten these rod bolts just so they're snug. Remember, always try to put them on evenly, a little bit on each side until they're tight. And give her a test spin again. Should turn easy still with one piston in it. Look how easy that is. No problem. I could still almost do it with one finger. That's a good fit, and everything's not binding and Also, I like to check to see if this rod will move. And it doesn't. Slides easily though. So there we go, we have our first piston in. Right in there. Just have to guide it a little with your fingers. Make sure it still moves and it'll go straight in. There you go. You see, I just put a little bit of assembly oil on here, just like that, just enough to cover the bearing. Goes on this way. Slip it on as far as you can by hand. And another thing that I strongly advise is I like to use a little bit of thread locker on all my rod bolts. Just put a little dab on the top of it there. That'll be enough to coat all the threads. And what that does is that prevents vibrations from loosening the bolts, and that's the worst thing you fear. Anything down here coming apart. This will be a boat anchor if that happens. Anyways, so we'll tighten these on by hand. It's kind of snug there. Snug there. Now always rotate the engine, make sure it turns properly. Oh, it's pretty good. So anyways, these have to get torqued 45 pounds with a torque wrench, so we'll do that next. I've already torqued all the other rods. We're going to double check them. Never hurts to double check everything. Might catch the one you left loose. You never know. And again, hear the wrench click. That means it's torqued to 45 foot-pounds. Now we're just going to double check these. I already torqued these. Didn't take that long to do. It takes a lot longer to rebuild the whole engine. So I just rather double check everything. Gotta play it safe on something like this. Alright, that takes care of that. We got all the pistons in, crankshaft, connecting rods, everything's torqued, ready to go here. Turns over quite nicely.